5 hours and 19 minutes. That's how long these lunatics let WrestleMania 35 go on for, and when all was said and done, fans around the world and in MetLife Stadium were left exhausted. I haven't even mentioned the 2-hour pre-show that started this whole thing. In no functioning society does it ever make sense for a wrestling show to go on for 7 hours. 12 matches accompanied by various segments that led to the most exhausting event in WWE history. The show ended at 12 a.m. Eastern time the next day, and regardless of how much good was on the show, the mammoth runtime overshadowed everything. That being said, on the road to WrestleMania, WWE also made some booking decisions that made fans wonder what they were doing. They had this unwillingness to let the simple direction be the right one. This was evident when WWE made the women's title match a triple threat, and also the direction they took with the Kurt Angle retirement tour. Aside from that, this show had a lot going for it, and the results were based on fan service. Seth Rollins, Kofi Kingston, and Becky Lynch all ascended to the mountaintop, winning their respective world championships. Batista and Triple H had one final hurrah. There were some solid undercard matches, but even with all the star power, it's not looked back at as a classic by any stretch of the imagination. I think the negativity surrounding the WWE in 2019 overshadows just how much talent they had at their disposal. They could have mixed and matched and given us the supercard of a lifetime. Here's just some of the names that were available at this time: John Cena, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Brock Lesnar, Batista, Kurt Angle, Ronda Rousey, Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Triple H, a mid-card full of up-and-coming talents from NXT, plus guys who were already mid-carders, a women's tag team that featured two of your most popular singles female competitors, tag teams like the Usos, the Revival, the Bar, the Hardys. It was really an embarrassment of riches. So I wanted to try something a little different. With all this talent available, how could the WWE have made WrestleMania more memorable? Where could they have fixed their errors? And what are some matches that I would want in an alternate reality? If I had the pen, here's how I would rewrite the timeline. This is if WrestleMania 35 was different. First things first, in this alternate universe, WrestleMania becomes 2 nights 1 year beforehand. Regardless of however you were to mix and match things with the talent pool available, the crowd would be exhausted no matter what. You can't shoehorn that many elite superstars, big time matches, and moments onto one night and not expect it to be a recipe for fatigue, because it's bound to happen. A problem with these shows was they felt like a marathon and not a party. WrestleMania is at its peak when it feels like a party. So you have WWE management announce that this year they will put on the biggest WrestleMania of all time. 2019 will mark a change to the show forever, and you do this by simply putting over your roster, telling the fans that there's so much talent that one night just is not enough. They need to make this a weekend-long spectacle, and with that announcement, everyone is challenged to make the card. Going into the real show, the big matchup was Becky Lynch versus Ronda Rousey versus Charlotte Flair in a winner-take-all match. Looking back at things, the company made this way more convoluted than it needed to be. The reason this had any traction in the first place was because Ronda and Becky were on a collision course for Survivor Series, and that was the match we never got, so the hunger to see it was still there. The company's original plan was to have Charlotte and Ronda one-on-one, and they did not stray away from having both women in the main event. That short-sightedness caused them to stray away from what the actual story was, which was between Becky and Ronda, the woman who debuted a year beforehand and dominated against the woman who hasn't been handed a thing. I get adding Charlotte made people want to see Becky win more, but regardless, Becky should have won anyways. Instead, they did this whole thing where Becky was suspended, then unsuspended, then suspended again, then Charlotte got added, and then we had the whole online backlash. Simplicity works. You run Becky versus Ronda for the Raw Women's Championship. By virtue of the company announcing that this is the first ever WrestleMania Women's main event, plus the hot story you already have, I think that gives it enough merit to sell the match. It doesn't need to be winner take all because there's already historical impact riding on this match. This is the main event of night 1 of WrestleMania. Becky continues to bring up the fact that she was never supposed to be here. That was the story already being told since SummerSlam. You put hurdles in Becky's way by making Ronda the chosen one. Have Stephanie and Triple H side with her and continue to make Becky's life hell. Continue to make it so that she can't lay a hand on Ronda. Have Ronda keep laying her out and tell the fans that management never saw anything in Becky in the first place. This whole thing is simple. Administration and Ronda versus Becky Lynch. There you go. Since Charlotte isn't in this match, it does two things. One, you have yourself another high caliber women's match for the weekend, and two, the titles stay separated. Whenever WWE does a winner take all match, specifically with the main men's or women's title, it immediately books them into a corner. They then have to do some sort of gymnastics to get one championship off whoever won it, and it almost never goes well. On the SmackDown side of things, you run Asuka and Charlotte in a submission match for the championship. A year before this was WrestleMania 34. The second match on that card was Asuka versus Charlotte, and Charlotte ended up making Asuka tap. You lean into that as much as you can. Lean into how Charlotte didn't just beat Asuka, but broke her. She made her tap. She made beating a woman that couldn't be beaten look easy. And you have that loss consume Asuka for the time after WrestleMania. She's not the same performer. Her character tries to get in Charlotte's good graces before eventually showing her true colors, and it all comes down to the fact that she is the woman who started this spiral in the first place. Now it's Asuka lock versus figure eight, and you're set. One competitor wants to prove that they simply had an off night, while the other wants to show that Asuka's win streak was fraudulent in the first place. This goes to night 2 since Saturday sees Becky and Ronda headlining the event. A match I still don't have headlining but I still have on this card is Daniel Bryan versus Kofi Kingston for the WWE Championship. This does not need to be changed. It was lightning in a bottle. It was a moment that belonged on the grand stage of WrestleMania, and everything from that story stays essentially the same, from the chamber all the way up until WrestleMania. However, the one addition I have is somewhere close to WrestleMania, WWE runs a mixed tag team match. Kofi and Becky versus Bryan and Ronda. Why I would do this is because both these stories have a similar element to them. They're both driven by the fact that management doesn't see the other two as top stars. Everything else stays the same. Match placement wise, I don't have this main eventing. Instead, this is the very first match we see this weekend. The match that actually kicked off WrestleMania 35 was Brock Lesnar versus Seth Rollins. That match is not happening. Instead, we need to rewrite the timeline. Brock Lesnar does not win the Universal Championship after Roman Reigns relinquishes it due to leukemia. At Crown Jewel, instead of Lesnar versus Strowman for the championship, WWE says that they're going to run a tournament and the winner will face the previous champion, that being Brock Lesnar, in the final. Rollins wins that match, and he wins that match because Brock gets distracted. The lights go out in the arena and Rollins gets a quick win over him. This distraction on the Titantron reads like a movie trailer, now showing the fall of Suplex City. It happens for months. Whenever Brock is competing for a title, Heyman is cutting a promo. Even in the Royal Rumble, it's a direct attack on him. The Hollywood Cinematics show Brock Lesnar competing in OVW, then it moves to him winning the championship in his earliest days, all the way to his grand return in 2012. Every time these clips roll, it's like a mini movie that culminates with an end screen that says, "The end." Eventually, Heyman and Lesnar grow more and more agitated and they try to get to the bottom of who this is. As the weeks become months, on the show after the Royal Rumble, one final video appears and it reads, "The End of the Beast, April 2019. A spotlight appears. It looks like someone is about to reveal themselves on the ramp. Brock's attention is diverted towards the ramp, so he's jumped from behind. As the camera pans up, it's revealed to be Batista. He demolishes Lesnar like we have never seen before. Batista bomb through the announce table, then steel steps, and he leaves him a bloody mess in the middle of the ring. He keeps things very simple. He asks Lesnar to give him what he wants, and what he wants is to end his career. This man goes full Hollywood. He hires security so that Brock can't touch him. He continues to leave him laying and then flees the scene. The crux of this whole matter is Batista couldn't shake the comparisons to Lesnar. He couldn't shake people putting the beast above the animal. In his eyes, he's simply better. You tell the story of these two's come up in OVW and how when Brock started to dominate, Batista was on the rise. Then when Batista was at his peak, Brock wasn't here. How they missed each other multiple times. How this is a dream match of epic proportions, but it's going to be a nightmare for Brock. Batista wants to get closure on his career, and he in his heart of hearts knows that he's better than Brock. Paul Heyman sells the hell out of this fight. You have locker room clearing brawls of epic proportions, and then both men sit down, sign a contract, and it's signed as career versus career in a no DQ match. The loser retires from in-ring competition forever. The matchup isn't Triple H versus Batista. See, he came back to have a retirement match with him, and yeah, I get it, they wanted to do it one more time, but we'd already seen it climax inside Hell in a Cell. As much as I love their rivalry and understand that Batista only wanted to face Triple H, why not do something new? Why not do something fresh? So now there's some hot storylines building. You have Kofi versus Bryan, marquee match. Brock versus Batista, marquee match. Ronda versus Becky, historic, and another marquee match. One of the biggest sins on the original card was the match between Baron Corbin and Kurt Angle, with Corbin going over and retiring Angle. Did it make sense from a storyline perspective? Yeah. Could it have been better? Yeah. Did WWE do anything of note with Corbin after they made him win? Nope. Stomping Grounds 2019. First pay-per-view I attended. Rent-free in my head. As I said, simple makes sense. On the road to the show, Kurt Angle announces a retirement tour, a tour that will hit its final stop at Wrestlemania 35. He goes through a who's who of opponents he's faced throughout his career and asks for the next guy to step up. Retiring Kurt Angle is made out to be equal to winning a championship. This sets up interwoven stories of competitors wanting their shot to retire him. So on the weekly, you get more content out of this story. In the announcement, he makes it abundantly clear that he will choose who he wants to face at WrestleMania. He wrestles Drew, he wrestles Samoa Joe, Randy, AJ Styles, Aleister Black, and eventually, after showing he can still go with the new wave, it's decision time. Everyone lines up at the ramp, and Kurt Angle has to make his choice. He says as good as everyone on that stage is, there's one name that hasn't been here. There's one name that he is going to fight at WrestleMania, and he's actually quite pissed that that person doesn't have the balls to show up. That man is John Cena. He says the one who had his first match against me will be the one who I have my final match against. And he essentially says that he's disappointed in Cena because the burning desire he saw in that kid in June of 2002 doesn't seem to be there anymore. He says that Cena isn't the same guy anymore. He's lost a step. He couldn't hang with The Undertaker. He isn't the company guy that he says he is. He tells him if he doesn't bring his A game, this might as well be a double retirement match. Throughout this in the build, you don't even need to have Cena show up. The match sells itself, and now you're wondering how this is going to play out. So out comes Kurt Angle at WrestleMania, and instead of hustle, loyalty, respect, rah, fine speech kid, out comes the most ruthless version of Cena. He steps into the ring, smiles, and asks Kurt Angle the same question he asked him 16 years ago. Kurt smiles, hits Cena with the ruthless aggression line, and when all is said and done, Cena retires Kurt Angle and then shows him respect by telling the fans that there's a reason Kurt's so good, and that's because he brings the best out of everyone. In the original show, John Cena showed up anyways to cut a promo on Elias, and as fun as that was, why not just do a match? It doesn't need to be anything crazy. It doesn't need to be this absurd, insane in-ring classic. There's something poetic in this being the way Kurt Angle goes out, and so many of us just wanted this to be the route that WWE took in the first place. So those are some of the headline matches checked off. We have one more to go, but before I get there, let's talk about the undercard. What I've mentioned is what's carrying a bulk of this WrestleMania build. My focus here was to look at the rest of the roster and hit from a more simplistic perspective as well as an in-ring standpoint for the matches. If you guys remember, this was a time where the mid-card titles were burning in hell. WWE did not give a rat's ass about these titles and couldn't book a mid-card title to save their life. But they also had this calling card, a calling card that I'm going to use in this video. What they do is throw a bunch of guys into a multi-man ladder match, have them wreak havoc. So what I'm gonna do is throw a bunch of guys in a multi-man and have them wreak havoc. Since WrestleMania 31 and 32 had the IC Championship as the showcase, Night 2 has the United States Championship 7-man ladder match. In this, Samoa Joe defends against Rey Mysterio, Drew McIntyre, Andrade, Ricochet, Braun Strowman, and Kevin Owens. Originally, this was Joe versus Mysterio one-on-one, which lasted all of 58 seconds. Now with an additional night, this is your show-stealing spot fest match. And I feel like this has the perfect mix of performers in it. It has the high-flying guys, it has the big-time hard hitters. You have this perfect mix that when put together could give you something really special. Kofi Mania I kept for this show. Another match I wouldn't change is Randy Orton going up against AJ Styles. This, from a rivalry perspective, was exactly what it needed to be. The meeting of two different worlds. Randy thinking the WWE was better, while AJ wanted to prove that just because he was from the Indies, he still belonged and was better than Randy Orton. Off the hop, I changed the women's winner-take-all match, but my card still does have a winner-take-all match. This one is for the Raw and SmackDown Tag Team Championships. Knowing what we know after this, the wildcard rule came into place and the rosters were everywhere. Like I said earlier, the main men's and women's titles are hard to split, but with the Tag Team Championships, it's a lot more doable. The match would be the Revival versus the Bar versus the Usos versus the Hardys in an elimination tag team match. Originally, I thought this should be a TLC match, but you run the risk of doing too much, especially because you already have a ladder match on here. For the Women's Tag Team Championships, you do the meeting of generations. Trish Stratus and Lita against Sasha and Bayley. Straight up, 2-on-2. The women who defined their generation against two of the women defining the current generation. Trish and Lita are the only two competitors brought into this video that were not available at the time. Think of how much talent the WWE had on their hands if these are the only two that I'm bringing in that were not available for WrestleMania. And now your main event, the match that headlines night 2 of what is the biggest WrestleMania the company has put on so far, is Roman Reigns versus Dean Ambrose versus Seth Rollins for the Universal Championship. After missing out on this match, we finally get it. Knowing what we know now, Dean Ambrose left the company a short while after WrestleMania, and the craziest part is they didn't even book him for this event. They made the guy look like an absolute fool on his way out, and the disrespect is actually absurd. That's a story for another day, but here's how this one goes down. After Roman relinquishes the title on the same night, Ambrose still turns heel on Rollins. Only thing is we avoid the Bane mask, we avoid the needle in the ass bit. Instead, on this night, Ambrose and Rollins don't capture the tag team titles, and after this, Ambrose leaves Seth laying. He leaves the WWE. He's nowhere to be found, but you can see as he's leaving, there's this internal conflict that he's going through. During this time, Rollins wants answers. Why did Ambrose do this? But after calling him, texting him, doing the whole nine, he just doesn't know. So instead, Seth decides to shift his focus to Roman. He says that the vacant Universal title is going to be his, and he's going to make Roman Reigns proud by being the fighting champion that he wanted to be. Like I mentioned earlier, Rollins beats Brock Lesnar for the Universal Championship at Crown Jewel. Rollins continues to defend until we get to the Royal Rumble. To cap off that show, Dean Ambrose returns at number 27 and he wins the Royal Rumble. Now he's got to make a decision on who he's going to face, either Bryan or Rollins. The next night, Rollins wants to know why Ambrose did it, and his answer comes when he poetically hits him with a chair shot from behind, points to the Mania sign, and that tells us everything we need to know. Ambrose tells the fans that he just can't unsee that day. He can't stop feeling the pain in his back when Rollins hit him with a chair. He can't shake it. As much as the chair shot hit him in the back, it hit him in the heart. He did what he did knowing that Roman wasn't going to be there for a while. When he looked at Seth that night, it all came flooding back. Maybe he wasn't thinking right because of the Roman situation, so he took time off to get his head right, and his head was right. He hates Rollins. He will forever hate Seth Rollins. Even though he forgave him in 2017 in the run-up to SummerSlam, he's never gotten over it. You lean into the simple premise that Seth broke up a brotherhood. He broke up a bond that seemed unbreakable. Ambrose also tells Rollins that he and Roman are brothers. They never turned on each other. They never did anything to put each other in harm's way, which is actually true. Aside from a few run-ins here and there, that turn never properly happened. The issue I had when piecing this together is Roman returned in late February, and you're probably wondering why I had Ambrose win the Rumble if he left the WWE anyways. Well, even in this alternate universe, you can't rebook someone's health. Since I have Kofi Mania taking shape the same way it did, I can't have Kingston win it, so the only person that's left to win that match is Ambrose. Roman was cleared for late February, and he returns in late February. That's something that I just can't change. When he comes back, he sees that the remnants of the Shield is in complete disarray, and slowly Ambrose tries to tell him that Rollins is the reason for all this chaos every single time. Everything he does is for himself. He tries to turn Roman against Seth even though he's the one playing mediator. Think of Roman as the glue that holds it all together. Eventually, he gets annoyed and says that both these guys need to be taught a lesson. He agrees with Ambrose that the Shield was forever and Rollins did in fact ruin that. Roman eventually wants in on the match. He respectfully takes on Ambrose with the caveat being if he beats him, he's added into the match, and that's exactly what happened. Then this turns into a much more simplistic story. A bond of three men torn apart, now fighting each other for their legacy to prove once and for all who is the best. There's so much history to lean into, including Ambrose departing the company, so you do that. You do testimonials from other superstars. You have these guys tell stories of what it used to be like on the road, how they became so close, and then everything fell apart. Roman has a family lineage to live up to. He's the chosen one, and to solidify his spot as the company's top guy has to win. Seth Rollins has this underlying battle with himself, which is the reason that he hit the chair shot in the first place. Now he needs to prove himself right, and Ambrose feels like he hasn't achieved that same destiny as the other two because he simply doesn't fit the mold of a typical WWE superstar. They're all tweeners in this build. It's not so much one guy's right and the other two are wrong. Everyone has a case. If you guys remember, after this, the company did something called the Shield's Final Chapter with all of them teaming up. Well, this is marketed as the Shield's actual final chapter. Never before at WrestleMania, never again at WrestleMania. Once and for all, whoever holds the title at the end is the guy. Let's now get to the results. I know it's been a long video, so I'll keep this as short as I can. WrestleMania kicks off with Daniel Bryan and Kofi Kingston for the WWE Championship. After a ridiculous amount of near falls, the crowd being really invested in this, both men pulling out all the stops, Kofi Kingston digs deep to get the definitive 1-2-3 in the middle of the ring and win his first WWE Championship. A crazy blaze of pyro. You would think Cody Rhodes is operating the board. The crowd is going ballistic. They get to see an emotionally driven match culminate with Kofi getting his moment. The New Day celebrates with him, so does his family, and you kick off the show in the right way. You kick off the show with a feel-good moment for the ages. Match 2 is Sasha Banks and Bayley beating Trish Stratus and Lita to retain the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships. Nothing too crazy, just a change of pace from what you've just seen. Match 3 is career versus career. Brock Lesnar versus Batista, no DQ. Loser retires from the company forever. This one is real simple. You have them go out, they use all the weapons in the world, wreak havoc across ringside, put each other through tables, demolish the barricade, and once it looks like the biggest car crash in WWE history, Brock Lesnar hits an F5 from the middle rope onto steel steps placed in the ring to retire Batista and keep his career alive. Also on this night, we get ourselves the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, only this time the winner gets to take on the men's world champion of their choosing on the very next Monday Night Raw. This is won by Aleister Black and gives you a fresh challenger coming out of WrestleMania, which is what I think this concept lacks. Randy Orton ends up beating AJ Styles in a singles match. In the tag team elimination match, it is complete mayhem, prime NXT black and gold main event on roids. The Usos end up being the last team standing, pinning the Revival to take the win. Before the main event, we parade out Elias to do his little concert, only this time he's not interrupted by John Cena, he's interrupted by The Undertaker. So you have your little segment to give the fans a bit of a breather after the tag team match and going into the main event, plus you get Taker's star power onto the show. Main event is Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey for the Raw Women's Championship. With this, since it leans heavy on the involvement of Triple H and Stephanie in the storyline, have them try to screw over Becky Lynch for the title. Use elements of the WrestleMania 30 main event in this match. Have other women from the roster come out and lay into Becky Lynch at the boss's command, ref bumps. Both of these two even try to call off the match before Becky punches Triple H out, knocks out Steph, and when all the madness dies down, Becky Lynch wins the Raw Women's Championship to end the show on top. Night 2 kicks off with the 7-man ladder match, and here you just go all out. This is the show stealer, this is the spot fest match, this is where everything is just going mental. Drew McIntyre ends up becoming your new US champion. This is followed by Asuka beating Charlotte for the SmackDown Women's Championship, making her tap to the Asuka lock. Cena then retires Kurt Angle. Also on this night, since the men had the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal the previous night, the women get their own. This is won by Ember Moon. She gets to choose whichever women's champion she wants to face on the very next Raw. So basically, you're making the next Monday Night Raw big on championship matches. These matches are more so added for pacing and getting more talent on the card, and no, the Intercontinental Championship does not make it onto my WrestleMania 35. Main event is simple, a classic triple threat match between Ambrose, Rollins, and Reigns. This is where you have the crazy promo package, you do the big time entrances, you go all out, and the match is a classic. Interwoven drama, callbacks to things that happened in the build. The Shield is coming together, they're giving one final love letter to their career. When it's all over, Roman Reigns gets the win to become the new Universal Champion. The night ends with him celebrating in the ring as Pyro goes off. The other two are dejected. He gets them both back in the ring, knowing that it'll be the final time these three share a ring together. They hug, and night 2 goes off the air with all three men standing in the middle of the ring, fists in the middle one final time, and then we fade to black. And that would be my card. It's not overbloated, there's not a lot of filler. In fact, both nights don't even have too many matches. With advertising, promos, the Hall of Fame, and everything typical of a standard WrestleMania, I think this has enough for both nights to hit well over that 3.5 hour sweet spot. On this card, you have Kofi Mania, you have the Shield Triple Threat, you have the first ever women's main event for a WrestleMania, Brock Lesnar and Batista in a dream match, Angle and Cena poetically meeting for the final time, a 7-man ladder match filled with some absurdly good talent, a dream meeting of two women's generations. Plus, your undercard is rounded out by Randy versus AJ, Charlotte versus Asuka, an elimination tag team match for the men's tag team championships, and you're building coming out of this with the battle royals. And that was if WrestleMania 35 was different. To me, this is the perfect mix of dream matches, big moments, in-ring classics, and historically significant matches. If you guys enjoyed this, let me know in the comments below. Maybe I'll make it into a series, but also let me know if the slate was wiped clean, how would you do it? I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll catch you guys real soon.